Hello fellow truck nerds. The question is, are Ace trucks right for you? So I've had about 4 sessions on these trucks to try and get a really good feel of what the pros and cons are of these. So these kind of strange looking trucks are the Ace 44s. And I want to note that these ones are about 3 or 4 years old. So they're the older model, there's newer ones out now. I doubt they have changed very much though, because if they changed the way they pop and turn, they would lose their base of riders. The measurement from one end of the axle to the other end of the axle is 8 3/8. So the height of these trucks, I believe, is 55 millimeters from center of axle to down below. So they have an interesting design here. You can see it really tapers, and that enables them to not need a washer, a speed ring. One of these little guys on the inside. So you can just go ahead and pop your wheel right on without putting a speed ring on the inside. And if you wanted to spread your wheels out a bit further, you could put a couple of speed rings on the insides. The range of deck width you can ride on a 44, I would say, is 8 1/8 to 8 3/8. I've tried it on both decks. So the old Aces have a kind of peculiar design where the hanger looks bent. And in fact, what it is there's just more material on the center of the hanger than on the outsides. So the axle is actually straight and it just has a slightly curved hanger. Now, I'm not really crazy about that design because if anything, I would almost rather it go the other way. Although in time, that is what happens to your trucks when they grind down. So now I'm going to show you the few sessions I had on these trucks, and at the end of the video, we'll get into more about how they feel and how they turn. Those are some carvy trucks. So I'm really having trouble with these. Once I start going at any speed, I'm basically getting speed wobbles, especially with a 360 flip, because you've only got the ball of your feet on 2 weird points of your deck. So as I'm riding up to 3 flip, I'm wiggling all over the place. So feeble grinds it was great for. Smith grinds I felt a little uncomfortable, and that was a twofold problem. 1, I'm wobbly going up because of the squirreliness of the trucks. 2, I'm just not really feeling like Smith grinding today. Now that I've hopefully gotten your attention back with some skating, let's get into some of the characteristics of these trucks. The first thing I noticed when I picked them up was they felt soft. They have a weird soft feeling, sort of like if anybody's ever worked with lead, And you know how a metal can feel soft like that? That's what I noticed as soon as I touched it with my thumbnail. Also, I tried dragging the base plate across some concrete, and then I dragged a Thunder, and the Ace felt noticeably softer. So I have a suspicion that these probably grind down a little bit faster than some other trucks. And anyone who can either confirm or deny this experience, please leave it in the comments. So that was my first observation before even riding it. And when I did start trying to grind them, I did notice that it had a sort of slower yet more consistent grind. And so I don't mean that I was struggling to grind on things, but it just genuinely felt softer than most other truck brands. The pop on these, I would say, closest resembles what a Venture High feels like. So you've got Venture Lows and Thunders, which make the front of your board feel kind of heavier, and they have more of a responsive, snappy pop that I personally find it easier to get my tricks higher on. And then next you've got Indies, which I need a nice steep nose and tail, or a small amount of space from the bolt to the tail. And then you've got Venture Highs, and I would say also Aces. So I was having a hard time popping my tricks nicely on flat ground as soon as I changed to this deck, which has more space here. It definitely makes the front of my board feel very light. In terms of weight, these trucks felt considerably lighter than an Indy 149. Kingpin clearance is not very good. I'd say it's about like a Thunder. Now, I'm not sure if the newer Aces are any different there. The slight curvedness of the hanger, the new Aces also don't have that. Now, let's get into one of the main features of an Ace, and that's the turning. They are really turny. The instant I jumped on it, I started skating like a carvy hipster. They were quite loose when I first put them on. I tightened them up a little, but I found by the time I finally got these tightened up to where I felt comfortable on them, I had lost a substantial amount of turning. So these trucks to me seem to want to be ridden loose. They turn tighter than a Thunder and an Indy. You can get a really deep turn out of them, like really fast. It's almost like you could do infinity carves on them, right? Like a figure 8. In the bowl, they turned faster than I needed them to, which I suppose could sometimes be a benefit. Now I want to note that I have the stock bushings in here. I did a lot of reading on the slap threads about changing the bushings, and it seems the only bushings that are actually compatible with these trucks are some Crux bushings. So if you've switched them over to Bones, you might want to be careful because Ace trucks seem to put a lot of wear and tear on the pivot cups. And when you change the geometry by putting Bones bushings in them, it's not actually the correct layout for them, and what that will do is put undue stress on your pivot cup, and it can actually, not only will it wear out the little rubber bushing grommet deal, it will also warp the metal. So that's what I've read on the threads. If you're already doing Aces with Bones bushings and you're happy with them, great, but just beware that that could be one of the things that could happen. I would say these turn exceptionally well. Even though these are only a few months old, the pivot cups already felt a bit loose. There's some play there. Maybe they came like that right off the bat. I mean, Ace's motto is loose trucks save lives, but I personally actually had a really hard time on these trucks. If I was going really slow, it wasn't a problem, but as soon as I started trying to skate and do tricks with any reasonable amount of speed, I had a really hard time setting up for my tricks. I'm just not used to having to constantly find the balance. And I ride medium loose trucks, but these are just the next level of looseness that I had a really hard time riding. I wouldn't be able to have this on a regular board. A cruiser board maybe, but I could not ride these as my regular trucks. The looks, I think they're a weird looking truck. I can totally see how they look really cool to some people. And I think on film they look kind of cool, but when I look at them in person, they just look a little bit too weird to me. These are based off of the old original Indy designs. They're not hollowed out in here. They're super skinny right here. The pinch on ledge tricks, like so for crooked grinds and things like that, was not noteworthy. I would say Thunders, in my opinion, have the best ability to lock in on a grind, like a pinch for crooked grinds and stuff. This, of course, is opinion, but I also found because they're so loose and floppy, that once I do get into a crooked grind, there's not a lot of resistance holding me in there, and there's not a lot of rebound popping me back out because the trucks just kind of want to fall into position on a grind. How they worked for my technical tricks, well, it was not to my personal preference, but it was doable. So I was able to do everything on these trucks. I just simply struggled with setting up on everything because they were so loose and out of my comfort range. And again, when I tightened them up, I didn't like how much of the turning I lost. So my final verdict on these trucks is They are not the truck for me. If you want a really carvy truck for a cruiser board, I think they're a great choice. If you're the kind of person that just likes to have your trucks feeling like they're gonna rattle off, then you're really gonna like these. You definitely can get one of the tightest carves out of all things. If you just wanna have street cred for being a super truck nerd and go down all the online vortexes, then this is a great truck for that because people nerd out on these big time. So major truck nerd points here. Anyways, I hope you guys found this useful if you're deciding to buy a pair of Aces. If you're a loyal Ace truck rider, I apologize that this does not come across as the most favorable review. Remember that this is totally subjective and this was my experience and opinion on these trucks. And if you love them, please tell me why in the comments. So thanks for watching, and Ace Trucks, stay carvy.